Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, it is I am the one and only Silver the Hedgehog here, and I am back for the likes of the Mexi Toys videos. And ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for some more of Let's Play of Donkey Kong Country 2 for the Game Boy Advance version released in 2004 as a remake. So, last time, we essentially did manage to fully complete Crazy Kremland, and overall, we actually did that world quite nicely, even though despite the fact that we do die occasionally though, but regardless of such though is about the fact that we somehow gathered every single collectibles, in addition to find every single bonus areas, so yeah, everything else checks out there. So today for this video is that we're about to be continuing things on and head over straight onto the 5th world in the game, which appears to be Gloomy Gulch. So, no matter what though, this is where the game starts to get a little bit more difficult at this point, although nowhere near as hard as the forms of Ghosts and Golems or anything else like that, which, as a result though, I've heard a lot of things about the forms of Ghosts and Golems, about the fact that that game is brutally hard, especially concerning for the fact that it's bad enough you have to replay for the game twice in order to be able to see the true ending of the game, but I digress. So, yeah, let's get to it with the forms of the first level in this world, which appears to be Ghostly Grove. So, the main gimmick about this level right here is that every once in a while though, there's a photo right there from the very start of the level, but I only require you to do the attack action by the way, so just to ensure for the fact that you can able to actually take this guy down. So generally speaking, that's as far as we can able to point things out of how to get that particular camera item. So, anyways, here's the main gimmick about this level right here, is that as you can see, there are some ghostly ropes that we can able to hang on to. But you have to be quick about it though, because otherwise though, if they start to disappear, you will fall to the bottomless pit, and you pretty much get screwed over if you manage to able to fall into the bottomless pit down below. So, but as long as you were able to actually have Dixie Kong with you, obviously though, it makes the entire stage a total cakewalk, despite the fact I accidentally got knocked back by the forms of those cloppers right there, so I didn't mean to do that. But that's okay though, because then again though, we've got so many extra lives. Like so far we actually on, technically 77 lives, or should I say 78 lives, because as far as I'm aware, like I stated before, if the life counter reaches to 0, this means we still got 1 chance left. So, anyways though, so a few things I want to talk about is about the fact that, well, today's date of course dear is the 6th of December today, in some cases in 2024 today, so it may look like about the fact that we've only got about 6 more days to go until not only the Game Awards is about to start, but it's also worth noting for is about the fact that the Sonic the Hedgehog movie DLC pack for specifically Sonic X Shadow Generations is also coming as well. Well, depending on what region you lived in, although suffice to say though, in the UK version has to wait until specifically on the 13th of December, just to ensure for the fact that we're able to actually wait during that time after the events of the forms of the Game Awards event. So, I digress. And it's also worth noting for as well is about the fact that we've only got about 2 more weeks left now until the Sonic the Hedgehog 3 movie is on its way for North America, or specifically America to be more specific. And meanwhile for the UK version has to wait until approximately 15 days for now. So generally speaking now, it's a good thing about the fact that me, Shadow, and Sonic as well as Blaze have already booked the forms of the film's release on the big screen, and as a result though, I fully appreciate about the fact that we can see it in day 1, just like the forms of how it does it in Sonic the Hedgehog 2 back in 2022. Except the first one, because obviously though we have to wait for about a day later, when the time is right. So generally speaking though, it's probably because no matter what though, is about the fact that it can be quite busy sometimes when it comes to the forms of day 1, for able to actually see certain films, but while doing the forms of pre-booking, or in some cases if you go onto the premiere seats or anything else like that. So yeah, you probably get the idea about that. So anyways though, there's also another thing else that's worth noting for. It is very unfortunate for the sake of the forms of today anyway. That's most likely because, unfortunately though, the majority of the Sega digital games has officially been delisted recently for the likes of the forms of multitude of systems. Like for instance though, with the PlayStation 4 version, or specifically the Nintendo Switch version combined, that one of those compilation games will no longer be available in digital stores, which appears to be the Sega Mega Drive Classics, which appears to be a compilation game that you can play Mega Drive games or Sega Genesis games if you lived in North America. Yeah, kinda sad honestly, but luckily though, similar to the forms of how it does it in Super Mario 3D All-Stars, it is still possible you can able to get the compilation game physically, but no matter what though, unlike in Super Mario 3D All-Stars nowadays, that the Sega Mega Drive Classics compilation game is actually cost a lot more cheaper in comparison to the forms of Super Mario 3D All-Stars, probably because during the forms of in 2021, that basically though, Super Mario 3D All-Stars was unfortunately been limited release. So no matter what though, I totally appreciate about the fact that the pricing is actually really cheap for the Sega Mega Drive Classics compilation, so I digress. Maybe I will try to get that at some point, but not now anyway though, just because obviously though I'm still pretty much gonna have to guaranteed about the fact that we can able to wait until some more Nintendo Switch stuff is about to happen during at some point until next year in 2025 before we move on to the next generation of Nintendo consoles. So, well, to be more accurate though, the Nintendo Switch successor, which we still have no idea what that's going to be called, but I digress. Let's not talk about the forms of the Nintendo Switch successor for right now, just because we're not exactly at 2025 just yet. Until, to be more specifically though, we've only got about 26 more days to go until we reach that certain point. So, anyways though, as you can tell, the reason why I've come back into this level again is most likely because I accidentally ignored the gold feather, which I do somehow realize is going to be right before, if I can recall correctly, it's going to be at, I don't know, this bit maybe? Or perhaps even maybe later on. Maybe before the second bonus area, at least as far as I'm concerned. So we're most able to actually try to investigate that. So yeah, it's definitely down there. So there we go. At least we did somehow fully accomplish every single aspect in terms of Ghostly Grove. Now let's move on to the next level. But before we do all that stuff though, I just want to make sure about the fact if we go into Cranky's Hunt right here, so just to ensure for the fact that we can able to actually take on, I don't know, the next Espresso race coming up. So either way, and fundamentally speaking now, I still need to grind as many of those banana coins as much as I can before I'm able to actually get something rewarding if I did somehow manage able to brought every single hint from Cranky Kong and all that stuff. So I suppose no matter what though, I'm also able to go on to let me think of something. No matter what though, I should probably be able to increase flight, so just in case we can able to, you know, try to fly a bit more. So yeah, let's get to it with the next Espresso race. And fundamentally speaking though, this is now the 5th race we can able to participating on, and my goodness, the status has gone pretty high substantially though, and so likely for later races to come. But I'm sure enough that was about the fact that if you again memorize every single aspect of this entire racetrack, then you should probably conquer this thing no problem. So as long as you would able to do not miss any of those item pickups like gold feathers alongside with the forms of speed boost thing, and you get the idea. So and it's also worth noting for as well is about the fact it is very unfortunate as well about the fact that the majority of the games, specifically on PC Steam, that was also being delisted recently, about the fact it is definitely unfortunate about the fact that the Sega Dreamcast collection has been delisted, which does manage to contain Sonic Adventure, Crazy Taxi, and any other games as well, like Sonic Adventure 2 and Night Engine Dreams or something like that. Well, mind you, luckily though about the fact that Sonic Adventure as well as Sonic Adventure 2 has not been delisted so far, which I think is actually kind of a good thing, but I wouldn't spoke too soon on that part, because obviously though it will miraculously get delisted in the future for the sake of time with the forms of, well, it's hard for me to say honestly, because I already know for a fact it is so depressing to able to see Night Engine Dreams goes disappeared in journey forms within the Xbox systems ranging from Xbox 360 and Xbox One / Xbox Series X / S, and overall though is about the fact I felt incredibly bad, not only for Microsoft, but as well as the forms of Sega themselves has recently delisted every single aspect during the forms of this year so far, which which is very depressing when it comes to both of those companies combined. So, although I understand with the phones of the Xbox 360, just because we moved on to a different generation, and aside from all that stuff though, the Xbox 360 has officially became, let's just say, technically 19 years old, at least what I thought about it anyway though. So anyways though, let's get into the next level right here, which appears to be Haunted Hall, and this is more accurately the final roller coaster level, and suffice to say, the main gimmick about this level right here is that we're getting chased by the phones of this peculiar ghost right there. And if you try to able to go through these gates right there, the timer will actually be active. And as a result though, this means about the fact that we have to get away in time, because otherwise though, if you do not make it, chances are though you will die. So, and it's also worth noting for us about the fact that every once in a while though, we will able to come across into those specific barrels that you do need to touch or ignore it entirely. Like for instance though, there's actually the phones of these plus barrels which does add up your time. However, there's also the minus barrel which you do need to avoid by the way, which actually decreases your time. So yeah, you have to watch out for those minus barrels at all costs. So anyways, there's only not one, not two, but 3 bonus areas in this level. So right from the get-go, as you can tell, not only do we able to actually access to that bonus area at the top, but it's also we might also get onto the other one after we're done with this bonus area. So either way, let's just go ahead and just try to go backwards and try to time our jumps and what have you, and there we go. So that pretty much does it for that particular first bonus area, and now we can go on to the next one. So, if I recall correctly though, the third and final bonus area in this level is going to be brutally difficult, which as a result though, you see what I mean if we get onto that particular bonus area. So anyways, let's go and once again collect some more stars. So it really doesn't matter if you somehow grab all of them, so you have to grab some of them. So thankfully there's actually plenty of those stars you can able to obtain. So there we go, pretty simple and easy bonus area. So now we can able to continue things on until we're able to actually try to find, well, luckily though, we've already did somehow found the forms of the gold feather from the very start of the level by only utilizing Dixie Kong in order to able to actually activate one of her barrel cannons. So something's worth noting for. And it's also worth noting for as well, I think that the DK Hero coin is going to be at the very end of the level, but something tells me I do need to require 2 of those Kongs in particular, which can able to trigger the tag actions as far as I'm usually concerned with. So, but I digress. So yeah, it is very unfortunate for the sake of the phones if you ever missed out on such glorious classics for certain Sega games for digital services. And it's also worth noting for as well, it is seriously unfortunate about the fact that Sonic the Fighters is no longer the case anymore, mainly because as far as I'm aware, well, despite the fact that that game is super duper easy to able to not only get all of these trophies, but as well as every single achievements as well, depending on what system you play on. So yeah, it is a bit of a bummer. I suppose the only method you can play Sonic the Fighters these days now is not only Sonic Gems Collection, both on the GameCube and PlayStation 2, at least if you only lived in European countries or the Japanese countries or anything else like that. It is also worth noting for as well, you can also technically play that game thanks to the forms of Lost Judgment game. So as a result though, you probably get the idea what I'm talking about. So yeah, it's kind of unfortunate, you know. Oh god, this bonus area is going to be really tricky because you're insanely fast, and on top of that, if you mistime your jumps, well, you can't go back, so you have to take a death and able to try this again. So yeah, that's something worth noting for if you try to go after that particular Chrome coin, which luckily it only took me about 1 attempt to do this. So anyways though, also, I thought it was very fascinating about the fact that there was actually yet another Wallace and Gromit BBC item so far. And fundamentally speaking, the reason why that particular item exists right now is probably because no matter what, though, is about the fact that after all, we're on the 6th of December so far. And fundamentally speaking, we've only got about exactly 19 more days to go until Wallace and Gromit, Vengeance Most Foul, is going to be releasing during that time period. So, and is also the reason why that we're about to be getting ourselves yet another BBC One item for featuring the classic duo with Wallace and Gromit. So, now I think fundamentally speaking, that was actually the second time that those two duos have somehow made it into the BBC One items, because the previous attempts they did was back in 2008 to able to celebrate the release of Wallace and Gromit: A Matter of Loaf of Death, the fourth short film as far as this is concerned, and meanwhile, though, back in Journey Films event 1995, but that was on a different channel, by the way, which, fundamentally speaking, was about the fact that they somehow managed able to celebrate the release of Wallace and Gromit: A Closed Shave back in 1995, and as a result, though, they did the actual BBC Two Christmas items. So, yeah, they once again gonna go for the Christmas-themed items, just like the films of how it does on those 2 years, respectively, both of which are, you know, as I mentioned this before, 1995 for the BBC Two channel, and one time in Journey Films within BBC One in 2008, and now here we are again, but this time in 2024, to able to actually celebrate the release of, you know, the upcoming film, Wallace and Gromit: Vengeance Most Foul, so it makes sense for that regard. And it's especially noticeable about the fact that they start able to introduce into ourselves no bots. So yeah, it makes it pretty obvious, because it's almost like a robot that's almost like a shape like a gnome, or golden gnome I should say. So because of that though, yeah, I'm still incredibly excited about this though still, especially considering for the fact it's been a very long time since we actually watched something related to Wallace and Gromit movies, or in some cases short films for that matter, because I don't know about you, but I haven't exactly got my invested onto World of Inventions back in 2010 for some time, but that's just mainly because no matter what though, I'm pretty much more used to with the forms of not only short films, but as well as the forms of certain films as well, like, you know, back in the day, that we've only got one feature-length film, which is made by DreamWorks and Aardman of all things, which is of course Wallace and Gromit: The Curse of the Were-Rabbit, which, kind of think about it, until next year, that will, once we get onto the films event 2025 that is, that we might able to celebrate the 20th anniversary of the film's release of Wallace and Gromit: The Curse of the Were-Rabbit, which that could be also applies with the first Madagascar film, so hopefully though we'll try to celebrate those. However though, there is one particular film I'm probably not going to celebrate the 20th anniversary after all, and that's of course Chicken Little, because let me tell you, that film does not age very well at all. Although I totally get it, it's one of the first, technically, the first ever CGI Disney film without Pixar support, but I will say though, it does not age very well. Well, I understand about the fact that they somehow managed to make Chicken Little a cameo appearance, or should I say a summon appearance in Kingdom Hearts 2, which I understand, but I will admit though, the film itself is not very good, which as a result though, we'll talk more about that during at some point until next year, around in 2025 if possible. So because of that though, once we're able to actually start be thinking about some more Let's Plays in the future for 2025 and beyond, so if possible though. So anyways though, it is also worth noting for as well, for those of you who lived in Japan, we actually got ourselves some more Gotcha Machine toys, and this time what appears to be body forms have been inspired by one of those items based off from The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. So for instance though, I think these Gotcha toys are actually inspired by let's just say Xeni device parts, so as a result though, that way you're able to actually collect them, and you can able to actually do like sticking to it with the forms of if you've tried to able to craft your vehicles while traveling through not only the sky world, but as well as the forms of the high wall and the depths themselves. But relatively speaking though, I believe those specific toys does have this special mechanic where it actually functions a magnetic device, and as a result though, it's about the fact that I think there was only like 6 parts you can able to collect. So mind you, it only takes place in Japan right now, similar to the forms of how it does it on these little standees from Super Mario Bros. Wonder, except the fact that no matter what though, it's about the fact I was incredibly jealous about the fact that why those toys are actually exclusive in Japan. Well, I totally get it about the fact that Nintendo was in Japan of course, so chances are though we never actually got the majority of the stuff, unlike Japan though. Like, for instance though, about the fact that they've already opened up the Nintendo Museum recently, and relatively speaking, that's as far as I can try to explain about that. So, Some of these parts does manage to contain, when it comes to forms of this Gulch machine, which appears to be, let's just say, the rocket part, and some wheels, and also the fans, and as well as this little flamethrower device. And on top of that, I think there was one of which appears to be like, I don't know, electricity kind of contraption or something. And I suppose no matter what though, there's also the boiling part as well, so you can able to actually cook some stuff at any areas, assuming if you do have certain ingredients to able to actually make your specific delicious meals while doing with this tough adventure. So yeah, that's as far as I can try to say about this, I guess. So yeah, kind of interesting with all that particular choices they somehow go for. In terms of the forms of that particular Gulch machine toys, so at least in Japan anyway. So also I want to classify for mentioning about this actually is about the fact that for those of you probably wondering, yes, I did indeed manage to able to try to show off some of these cheat codes at some point in this version of the game once we get onto the extra video, because well, if you couldn't tell already from the time length of this video, this might actually be the only world that we can able to actually decide to do in one specific part, because I was originally trying to able to do this as in a two-parter kind of stuff, much like the forms of how it does in World 1 all the way up to World 4. But aside from all that stuff though, I think to me though, the 5th world is kind of short, so relatively speaking though, as long as we're able to actually do some other objectives first when it comes to dealing with the forms of other mini-games and all that stuff. Like for instance though, we still need to try to able to, you know, focus around the forms of not only the Espresso race, but as well as the forms of the Bonanza, bonus Bonanza quiz questions, and of course, not to mention though, Funky's Flights 2 for the sake of different objectives. So, yeah, you get the idea about that. But I will say this for this point right from the start though, that when it comes to the cheat codes in this version of the game, it does manage to contain 9 of those cheats you can able to actually activate. So, but then again though, we'll save that particular topic if we get on to the extra video or anything else like that after we're done with the main game first. So, anyways though, and it's also worth noting for as well is about the fact I do somehow realize that there's a game called Batman Arkham Shadow that usually involves around you able to actually only utilize with Meta Quest virtual reality kind of thing. Well, I think it's kind of fascinating to me though is about the fact that 2 of those actors which I do somehow recognize, which appears to be not only Tara Strong, but as well as the forms of Roger Craig Smith. Like Roger Craig Smith did somehow voice Batman, and meanwhile for Tara Strong, she actually did voice, let's just say, Queenie Haley from the likes of the forms of, let's just say, one of those love interests for Joker, which I think is actually kind of interesting to say the least, especially concerning for the fact that, well, I already know 2 of those actors, because obviously though, Tara Strong, that I do recognize her from the likes of the Powerpuff Girls, classic series that she did a voice of Bubbles. In addition to that though, when it comes to Roger Craig Smith, and also say applies with the forms of how the fact that when it comes to Tara Strong, that she also did the voice of Twilight Sparkle from the My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, or specifically G4 era to be more specifically. And as far as the forms of Roger Craig Smith is concerned, obviously I've already recognized him because obviously though he did the voice of Sonic the Hedgehog. So yeah, it's kind of interesting that 2 of those actors are, you know, in one particular game from Meta Quest 3 for the sake of the forms of Batman Arkham Shadow. So yeah, kind of interesting to say the least. So, anyways though, aside from all that stuff though, speaking of which, in regards to the forms of The Legend of Zelda related, I do somehow manage to found out there was actually an official placement within the actual series timeline in regards to the forms of the most recent release of The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom. Like, for instance though, I think the actual game does manage to take place after the events of Triforce Heroes and the original The Legend of Zelda, and even with Zelda 2 and Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom that will follow, if I can recall correctly. Well, I don't usually care about the timeline as much as the forms of how the fact I can usually play those games quite often, but not all the time though, but usually I just don't really care for the timeline, because much like the forms of how it does it on Kingdom Hearts series, the timeline is a bit of a mess in terms of structure, because obviously though we have to force the able to actually just to, you know, try to buy multiple systems back then, ranging from PlayStation 2, Game Boy Advance, Nintendo DS, mobile phones, specifically in Japan anyway, and even PSP, and even the Nintendo 3DS, to able to actually understand about the forms of the actual specific timeline when it comes to forms of the majority of the games themselves. They're able to actually understand of what's going on. Like back in the day though, it is a bit of a nightmare at first glance, but nowadays, during the forms of in 2013 all the way up to onwards, specifically thanks to the forms of the PlayStation 3 and even PlayStation 4 nowadays, I usually kind of thinking about it though, it's probably best to be able to actually recommend with the PlayStation 4 in mind, because obviously though, if you do somehow manage able to go after every single Kingdom Hearts games in general, with one of those compilation games in general, then you will able to actually understand of what's going on with the actual story timeline, except with the mobile game, of course, being the forms of Union Cross, because obviously though, that was actually the origin story, in regards to the forms of the Keyblade wielders, or anything else like that, despite the fact I don't usually care for the gameplay. But in terms of storytelling, it is very interesting to say the least, but except the gameplay and even graphics doesn't seem to fit my cup of tea or anything else like that, so that's maybe my bias, I guess, in regards to the forms of how I feel about Kingdom Hearts Key Union Cross when it comes to the forms of gameplay in mind. And it's also worth noting for as well, I don't usually care for the forms of Dark Road either. Well, I understand about the forms of the actual young Xehanort's perspective origin story, but it's just about the fact that, again, the gameplay is not my kind of thing, unlike the forms of the rest of the series, that it does manage to be able to fit my style very nicely, with all its action, RPG, kind of platforming every once in a while, for the sake of the forms of certain stages in mind. So, anyways, let's try to take down this zinger right here to get the next picture. And then fundamentally speaking though, we actually now onto the halfway point in terms of obtaining those camera items. So, pretty awesome potentially. So, anyways though, there's also another thing else that's worth noting for actually. Remember I said this before about the fact it is very odd about the fact that for those of you who lived in China, that at some point in 2026, they'll eventually try to able to shut down not only the eShop application, but as well as from that though, they're also about to shut down the online services as well. Now I believe, according to the actual description, for I did somehow manage able to find out, Nintendo has announced the closure of network services for Nintendo Switch in China, which includes the eShop. This will be going into effect starting in 2026. That the first part of the shutdown begins on March 31st, 2026. Oh geez, that sounds familiar. Especially concerning for the fact that with March 31st is obviously very similar to the forms of how it does it with, you know what I'm saying, with the Super Mario Bros. 35th anniversary merchandise, alongside with the forms of not only Super Mario Bros. 35 has officially shut down since in 2021. In addition to that though, with limited physical runs, even digital purchases as well, for Super Mario 3D All-Stars and all that stuff, and pretty much anything else in general. But anyway, on that day, games and other software can no longer be purchased, and then on the May 15th in 2026, it will not be possible to download titles, redeem codes, or obtain DLC. Additionally, on the same day, other network services will be ending. So, yeah, it seems kind of sad for Chinese players out there, especially concerning for a fact I just have no idea why that was a thing in China. Well, suffice to say though, is about the fact that I believe from my predictions on the English version or any other regions for that matter, it could possibly try to happen during at some point around the time when we get onto 2030s or something. But again, time will tell, especially concerning for the fact it's a bit too early to say for this point right about now. So I digress. So it's also worth noting for as well actually, is about the fact I do somehow manage able to find out that in regards to the forms of, remember what I said before about the fact that with certain Nintendo games, about the fact that certain players do seem able to despise the most, in regards to the forms of some Nintendo games, that some other aspects they don't really like as much. Like, I've already mentioned about the forms of how the fact that they seemed able to be really despised tripping mechanics in Super Smash Bros. Brawl, and same plus with the forms of the car mechanics in both Mario Party 9 as well as Mario Party 10, but I'm very glad about the fact that we're coming back into the forms of the classic traditional gameplay style, in regards to the forms of not only Super Mario Party, despite the fact that the boards in that game is incredibly small, and it's also worth noting for is incredibly broken with the ally system. And it's also worth noting for is that we somehow, you know, eventually at some point in Mario Party Superstars, and if, you know, nowadays with Super Mario Party Jamboree, at the very least that the classic gameplay mechanics has been kept to a minimum, or specifically though, that it's here to stay at the very least. So we are no longer going to be able to be actually hopping onto the car mechanics anymore, which I believe that makes a lot of players out there, myself included, extremely happy for it, especially considering for the fact that we all incredibly felt that back during the events event sometime in 2015, after when, you know, Mario Party 10 did somehow first came out. I mean, I thought it was okay, but it's just that it's not good. It's not the best console Mario Party games ever. I'm gonna say that much. So, anyways though, and as well as on that though, I've also heard about the fact that the actual game that a lot of people really despised about, and that's what appears to be GB Robo Zip Blast, mainly because, as far as I'm aware, back in the day, in 2015, that that particular official trailer for GB Robo Zip Blast for the Nintendo 3DS actually got a lot of dislikes back then, mainly because a lot of people seem to really hated the actual genre change for GB Robo Zip Blast, because as far as I'm aware, unlike the first game, as well as the DS game, it's all about 3D exploration type of game, which I definitely heard about it, but unfortunately the pricing for GB Robo for the GameCube nowadays is extremely expensive, which I still have no idea why they cost so much more money these days, and that could be also applied with the forms of Fire Emblem Path of Radiance for the GameCube as well. Neither especially noticeable with the European version of Mario Party 7, and on top of all that stuff though, same applies with Pokemon XD, Gale of Darkness, and pretty much the majority of the GameCube games nowadays is extremely expensive these days. So, anyways, here's the next mission objective in Funky's Flights 2, and this time, as you can see, in order able to actually go downwards right here, we need to activate those specific down arrow switches, and some of these switches you do need to activate the specific order, but there is one particular switch you can simply activate on the last one, potentially, and basically in this mission objective right here, is that we need to deliver the boombox right at Funky Kong's, just to ensure that he really wants to listen to certain music again. So I suppose we need to deliver the boombox back to Funky Kong, and then once you've done so, you can now able to actually hop over back onto the Fonz's helicopter spot, and after that though, mission accomplished. So yeah, pretty swell, and oh no, that mission is actually not too shabby for the most part. And as far as I'm aware though, we've only got 2 objectives left, or anything else like that. I might be wrong, but we shall definitely see what happens in due time, because, well, straight to the point though, is about the fact I get the strong feeling, unfortunately though, we're about to stumble across into my least favorite stage in the entire world, or the entire game for that matter. Nothing wrong with it per se, but here we go on to Web Woods. So, basically though, we're going back into this forest environment, and straight to the point, the main gimmick about this level is that we have to once again able to turn into specific animal body, which appears to be Squidward the Spider, which definitely will able to brings up to its name with the forms of Web Woods, so that's besides the point. So, oh jeez, okay, how do I supposed to get through here? Let me try the attack action quickly so I could, I can't reach it from up here. Ah, drat. Oh, this is not looking good. Ah, dang it! I should have known with that particular knockback occurrence. So, oh well, we'll try this again, and hopefully we should not mess this up at the beginning. Well, usually this is only just the beginning after all with the stage. So, and it's also worth noting for is that this stage is incredibly long, and it's especially noticeable if you really want to get out of your way to able to actually go after the DK Hero Coin. Well, similar to the forms of how it does in one of those levels in World 4, basically though, the DK Hero Coin is going to be located at the very end of the level, so usually at the goal segment there. So yeah, this might take a bit while, especially considering for the fact that after we're done with the forms of this beginning part right there, while take control of not only Diddy Kong, but as well as Dixie Kong as well, then chances are though is about the fact that, well, at the very least we actually got ourselves an extra life back at the very least, thanks to the forms of one of those two 1-up balloons, or specifically the green balloon, and from here we can able to take control of Squitter the spider for the majority of the level, which means we have to do with a lot of spiderweb platforms that we can able to create, and on top of that we have to do with some very tricky platforming here and there as well. So yeah, wish me luck, I guess. Although, potentially speaking though, this level does have two bonus areas, which does manage to able to require this specific thing. And as far as I'm aware though, I believe the gold feather is going to be quite well hidden. But if I do ended up missing that, well, obviously though, I'm trying to able to actually beat this level as quickly as I possibly could. So, again, we shall see. So, anyways though, back to what I was saying about the forms of certain features that a lot of players seems to really despise the most. Basically though, what was that? Oh yeah. As far as I'm aware, I've already mentioned about the forms of the tripping mechanics in Super Smash Bros. Brawl and the slow animations in Pokemon Generation 4 for the Nintendo DS within Pokemon Emerald, Pearl, and Platinum, and the car mechanics in both Mario Party 9 and Mario Party 10. And I've already mentioned about this in the journey forms of the other videos ago, which appears to be Kong-specific collectibles in Donkey Kong 64, and removed Pokemon from both Pokemon Sword and Shield, and also Samus's personality change for Metroid Other M. And I've already mentioned about this earlier, genre change for Chibi Robo Ziplash, and also the blue coins from Super Mario Sunshine, just because it's so frustratingly trying to find them, and you probably name the rest. And also with the forms, I've already mentioned about this, I think so anyway, I think I've already mentioned about this, well I might as well say this again, that a lot of players also really despise not only touch controls, but also gameplay as well for Star Fox Command for the Nintendo DS. So, yeah, that's why I classify that. And also, a lot of players seems to really despise the slippery controls in F-Zero Maximum Velocity, because I already know for a fact that that game has been developed by a different developer by the forms of NT Cube, or else nowadays Nintendo Cube, thanks to the forms of the existence of Super Mario Party Jamboree, but I digress. So, but I still haven't exactly touched upon that game for quite some time, mainly because I want to demonstrate with the forms of cheat codes you can able to actually activate by unlocking one of those races, but you have to able to utilize a new save feature on your save profile, so that's something worth noting for. So, and also a lot of people seem to really despise the forms of Smash Tour from Super Smash Bros. For the Wii U, which I understand because it is nothing like Mario Party, and as far as I'm aware, it plays kind of similar to Monopoly, except the fact that I just really wish if I were able to come back on playing Smash Run from Super Smash Bros. For the 3DS at any day, because it's not only incredibly fun, but as well as it's nice that you can able to actually beat the likes out of the forms of certain familiar foes from any other Nintendo franchises, ranging from several of Mario enemies from the Mario universe, in addition to the forms of certain enemies from Donkey Kong Country, like the Kremlings and all that stuff, or yeah, just critters or anything else like that, and also same applies with certain enemies based off from Kid Icarus, and yeah, I just really wish if Smash Run will make its return, but unfortunately though, that's not the case, unfortunately, so oh well, no big deal, and usually I just don't like Smash Tour anymore these days now, especially because it's incredibly luck-based, and to me though, I thought it was very dull, and similar to the forms of how it does it in Amiibo Party for Mario Party 10, that most of these maps are pretty simplistic to me. Although, it is interesting for sure, but it doesn't have these board-specific mechanics, and not to mention though, several gimmicks are incredibly random depending on what specific events is actually happening, and don't even get me started in journey forms of certain achievements I do need to get, although the best way I can probably recommend in regards to the forms of trying to able to get every single achievement in Smash Tour is to able to actually trigger not only one but 4 controllers. So it doesn't really matter what control schemes you somehow used to. Like for instance though, I did manage to play through the actual mode the entirety of not only with Nintendo GameCube controllers thanks to the forms of the adapter, but as well as from that though, I had to use the Wii U gamepad as well, and that is a lot more cumbersome to able to try to deal with controlling multiple players at once. And generally speaking, once I'm pretty much done with every single achievement in Smash Tour, and after unlocking Pac-Land, well, suffice to say, I just don't want to go back on playing through Smash Tour anymore, just because it is really disappoints me every nowadays, especially after experiencing not only Super Mario Party, but as well as Mario Party Superstars, as well as the forms of most recently Super Mario Party Jamboree. It is immediately apparent that there is nothing there that hasn't already been said about the fact that when it comes to Smash Tour nowadays is actually going to be, you know, kind of a weaker addition when it comes to the Super Smash Bros. History, alongside with the forms of the classic mode from Super Smash Bros. For the Wii U, in my opinion. But that's just mainly because, well, I honestly do prefer, nowadays, with Super Smash Bros. Ultimate's unique classic routes, depending on what characters you select, but that's just me. So, anyway, and I just realized I accidentally missed the gold feather, so I need to go back into this level for the final time, and hopefully though we can able to try to find it if we somehow become fast enough, so... But anyway, and it's also worth noting for as well, that a lot of people seem to also despise about, and that's what appears to be Quarter Man from the likes of Punch-Out's arcade version, which I'm not exactly sure why that is though. Mind you, I haven't exactly experienced that version of the game yet, but that's just mainly because the only time I only played Punch-Out was the original NES version, so I just want to classify for mentioning about that, so I've got no comments about that. And also, a lot of people also despised about, it appears to be not only motion controls, but also with Fi as well, from The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword, specifically on the Wii version, just because Fi can be annoying at times, and on top of that, the motion controls can be felt a bit cumbersome to pull off. Well, in regards to the forms of certain actions, and not to mention though, sometimes the motion controls can be pretty hit and miss. Well, that could be also applies with the Switch version as well, but at the very least on the Switch version, with the HD version, there is now button controls now, so at the very least though, you don't have to necessarily try to worry about not only Joy-Con drifting if you play the game long enough with the Joy-Cons setup, but in addition to that though, is about the fact that, well, you get the idea. And finally though, a lot of people really despised about when it comes to the forms of certain Nintendo games in one of those specific parts or features, which appears to be the lengthy tutorial for Mario Luigi Partners in Time for some reason, because I'm almost assuming about the fact that Dream Team has the worst defender when it comes to pacing with the forms of tutorial stuff, but aside from all that stuff though, apparently Partners in Time does manage to have some pretty lengthy tutorials here and there, in regards to the forms of trying to able to, you know, learn some moves with the bros, and even with the babies moves, and you get the idea what I'm talking about. And also, speaking of which though, is about the fact that I also did somehow manage to find out there are some of the most overpowered characters in some Nintendo games I did somehow manage to able to find out. Like, I could only find a few of them, to be more specifically though. Like, for instance though, the most overpowered character in let's just say Super Smash Bros. Brawl, for example, the most overpowered character in that game is Meta Knight, because as far as I'm aware, I believe it's one of his attacks that he just spins around and all that stuff. I could be wrong, but either way though, it has been about quite a few months ago since I actually have last played Super Smash Bros. Brawl, because I was so close to able to actually get fully 100% everything in that game before I move on to the next Super Smash Bros. Game where it comes to 100% in the game, which appears to be both Super Smash Bros. For the Nintendo 3DS, because I'm pretty much almost done, and for the majority of Super Smash Bros. For the Wii U, which wish me luck when it comes to able to achieving all those achievements, because, well, I'm gonna say this right about now. Getting 100% in the game on Super Smash Bros. Brawl is not, the Super Smash Bros. For the Wii U, I should say, it's not worth it in my eyes, just because no matter what though, all you get is just coins, and that's it really. So there's no unlockable stage, or unlockable character for that matter, it's just literally coins. So, yeah, it's not even worth it in my opinion, so, but I digress. And the most overpowered character in, let's just say, both Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, because of one of those modes you can able to change with, and it's also with Mario Kart Wii as well, that Funky Kong, he's the most overpowered character in both Mario Kart Wii and Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze? Well, usually for Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, specifically on the Switch version, because obviously though there was actually a new mode called Funky Mode, where basically though you can able to break the challenge by simply able to have no harms of spikes, and not to mention though you get infinite rolling and infinite underwater breathing, and you pretty much know the idea of the actual suggestion what I was gonna be on about for the sake of time, so and I digress. So, and there's also the most overpowered character in Super Mario Party, which appears to be Bowser himself, because he's the only one, when it comes to his own dice block, that does contain a 10. And then as soon as you get a 10 though, you can easily guarantee to able to actually win the actual specific boards no matter what. So, yeah, at the very least though, the character specific dice blocks are no longer the case, in regards to the forms of not only Mario Party Superstars, but alongside with the forms of Super Mario Party Jamboree as well. So, at the very least though, is about the fact it's now been replaced by specific abilities thanks to the forms of the Jamboree Buddy system. So, yeah, you get the idea. And what's this? We actually got ourselves a familiar foe from the likes of the forms of Sense in World 1, except now he was actually on a ghost form, which means about the fact it's more accurately a continuation of the first world's boss, except the fact that sometimes though, my timing is a little bit off right here, but regardless of such though, we still have to watch out for a lot of things, ranging from not only its netcos, but as well as that though, those eggs will come out of nowhere, and as a result though, they can usually just somehow shoot it downwards and across and even upwards essentially. So, but aside from all that stuff though, if you try to take down the real nectar right here, then obviously though we can able to actually use the barrel to toss or essentially try to hit the ghostly version of Crow, and basically though, that's pretty much about it for World 5. So, not too shabby for the most part, even though it's a little bit lengthy for the sake of the forms of this video anyway, but I just want to get this out of the way before we end off the video here. And it's also worth noting for we're now on to the 6th world, so which appears to be K-Roll's Keep. So anyway, so before you're able to actually leave and all that stuff, let me quickly double check on specific parts around here, like for instance though, yeah, we'll just go ahead and go in here, because as far as I'm aware, I didn't see the estimation mark familiar, so yeah, we'll pay 15 more Creme Coins to able to actually unlock the 4th level in the Lost World, which, if I recall correctly, is going to take place in a lava environment, which appears to be Fiery Furnace? Yeah, Fiery Furnace indeed. So either way, at the very least we did somehow unlock that at the very least, so now we can able to leave for now. I don't think we can able to actually unlock the final level in Lost Worlds just yet though, just because no matter what though, we still need to able to try to find some more bonus areas, and not only in the next world coming up, which appears to be K-Roll's Keep, but as well as the forms of the majority of the Lost World as well. So yeah, suffice to say for this point guys, is that we get endings off this point right here. So join me next time for more of Let's Play of Donkey Kong Country 2 for the Game Boy Advance version, is that we're going on to the 6th world in this game, which appears to be K-Roll's Keep, and yeah, it's gonna be quite interesting. So yeah, I'll see you guys until next Monday. Later, fellas.